Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Okay. Hi, guys. Vox video, Russia's private military force explained. So this is the Wagner group, what you want to call it. And I was a little confused about this group when I was watching some Kings and Generals, uh, the war in Ukraine right now. And I heard that they were, this elite force, or maybe not elite, but better force. But then I also heard in another video that they put a bunch of random conscripts in it, and so then I got confused. I'm like, wait, is Wagner the really sophisticated military group, or are they the complete opposite? I don't know, which means this is a good video.
On August 1st, 2022, this small mining town of Soledar in Ukraine had apartments, buildings, houses. Fast forward to January 10th, 2023, and it had turned to rubble.
Holy
that same
crap.
afternoon,
Wait. Is this the same coloration? Oh my god. So are those black points right there just like scorched grass? Because all of the greenery is gone. Okay, I really need to know this.
January 10th.
Okay, so it's compounding things. Because I'm like, wait a second. They bombed it so much that every leaf is off the tree. But I mean, I'm sure some of the trees are... I'm sure some of them are scorched, but I'm sure some of them shed their leaves in the winter because this is August. This is January. And maybe it's covered by snow. Okay, I was shocked because this looks like a nuclear blast kind of scenario. I mean, regardless, look at all of the craters.
2023,
Jeez.
And it had turned to rubble. That same afternoon, a statement on the app Telegram surfaced claiming Wagner took control of this entire territory of Soledar. But even though the Russian army has been fighting across Ukraine for months, this message didn't come from them. It came from Yevgeny Prigozhin, a Russian oligarch with close ties to Russian President Vladimir Putin. He started out as a Kremlin caterer, where he got the nickname Putin's chef. But in 2014, he became the head of the Wagner Group, a covert Russian network with mining companies, political influence operations,
and a brutal private military force.
Until recently, the Wagner Group was a secret operation, and claiming a public victory like this was rare. But things are starting to change, and the playbook of this dangerous group is becoming much, much clearer.
Sorry, that reminds me of the Mitchell Webb sketch. The Are We the Baddies?
Becoming
sort of.
much, much clearer. In 2014, Russian forces annexed Crimea and began fighting in eastern Ukraine's Donbass region. A year later, soldiers in unmarked green uniforms showed up on the ground to support Russian troops. They were called Little Green Men, but we now know
this was likely the first time Wagner soldiers were deployed on the ground.
These soldiers have become Prigozhin's frontline agents for Russia's global strategy.
They serve multiple purposes for the Russian government.
Are they like
but chief
Navy
among
SEAL?
them is to divert attention from activities that the Russian government, and the Kremlin in particular, doesn't want the world to pay attention to.
That's Candace Rondeau, a journalist who investigates the Wagner Group and Russia's strategy for proxy warfare.
One of the main functions that the Wagner Group serves is to deliver weapons and military services to countries with which Russia has a military technical agreement.
Russian law technically prohibits its citizens from fighting for money in foreign countries, but the opaque nature of the Wagner Group has allowed it to recruit tens of thousands of soldiers, mainly from Russia.
Generally speaking, these are hardened military veterans at the command level, and then kind of at the sort of rank and file level. Those who were not recruited from prisons tend to come from, elite backgrounds. In the beginning,
See, that's the confusing part to me, because so they take prisoners as soldiers, but they also put very hardened veterans. It just seems counter to
You couldn't really distinguish them, but today the Wagner Group brand is completely recognizable by their emblems, their insignia, and their online brand. These guys now are basically kind of like the McDonald's of the Russian way of war.
And this new visibility has given us a better look at the 3 strategies they employ to do Russia's dirty work around the world. The Wagner Group targets countries experiencing long conflicts or that are weakly governed or corrupt. Take Syria, which has been under authoritarian rule for more than 50 years, and in 2011 saw a civil war break out between the Syrian government and anti-government rebel groups. To fight the rebels, Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad turned to his Russian ally for help. Shortly after, Wagner mercenaries appeared in Syria to support the government forces. Since then, all these countries have seen Wagner troops on the ground, most of them while going through periods.
Venezuela too, huh? What is that? Is that Azerbaijan? It looks a bit big to be Azerbaijan. Or is that like Kurdish? What country is that? That doesn't make sense. If Azerbaijan's that big, then okay.
And all these countries have seen Wagner troops on the ground,
Afghanistan,
most of them while going through
Kyrgyzstan.
periods of instability. This has allowed the Wagner Group, and by extension Russia, to expand its reach to at least 4 different continents. In
Indonesia.
particular in Africa, where at least 18 different countries have seen Wagner forces on the ground in the past decade.
In these client states where Wagner is operating,
That's kind of scary because, well, scary. I don't know if that's the more I learn, all right, about, you know, different countries and whatnot, is that there's no is good guy the thing. I want to be more, you know, less putting myself in other countries' shoes. All right, so if you're China, you're looking after China. If you're Russia, you're looking after Russia. If you're India, Ukraine. And it sounds kind of obvious, but I think it's pretty easy to not think about that and to just like, I'm so bad right now talking. Just okay. I'm following. But the fact that China is also really influencing Africa, but so have we in the past.
in
the past decade.
Okay, forget what I said.
In these client states where Wagner is operating, a lot of the work is teaching local militaries how to do kind of reconnaissance and counterinsurgency, but often in a very rough way.
The Wagner Group generally does this by spearheading brutal military incursions, like in Mali, another prime target for Wagner. Since 2012, Mali has been fighting a jihadist insurgency and has experienced 3 coups in just 9 years. 2 of the 3 coups brought Assimi Goïta to power, a Russian-backed president that remains in power today. For nearly a decade, Mali had military support from France,
its former colonizer.
but in 2021, when France started to withdraw its army, it's widely believed Mali contracted Wagner troops to help them fight against the rebels and secure power.
See, it's hard for me to like poo-poo this when the U.S. does the same thing.
For nearly a when France started to withdraw a Russian,
Like, oh, wow, there were a bunch of
in just
coups, and then
9
our
years.
guy is in
2
there.
of
I'm going to watch the Johnny Harris video on American coups in the 20th century. I think I'll do this after this.
the 3 coups brought when
Sorry.
France started to withdraw its army. It's widely believed Mali contracted Wagner troops to help them fight against the rebels and secure power. Mali denies the deployment of Russian mercenaries from the Wagner Group, but satellite imagery analyzed by the Center for Strategic and International Studies suggests they arrived quietly in December of 2021 and
nice
built
runway.
a military base and access roads by the airport to facilitate their deployment.
One of the biggest motivations for standing up a ghost army that nobody can quite describe or define, the main purpose of that is to make sure that the activities that the people do are not seen.
Guys, isn't it interesting? I know I'm pausing again, but whatever, okay? Isn't it interesting? This is kind of a rhetorical, like, sassy remark, I guess, but how whenever countries like the U.S. or China or Russia or just whenever they like get involved in building up a certain country's infrastructure, it always seems to be around airports and navy dockyards. Like I saw this video of where China was helping a country like Tonga or Nauru or one of the very small Pacific nations, and they built and they offered to build improved naval dockyards in these countries that so happened to be like the perfect size for a Chinese warship. And the plan was that, like, this is what countries do, is that the whole plan, it's initially pushed out as like, we're helping you, but really all along they're just preemptively building stuff that they know when the country is unable to pay them back or something, they'll just be like, okay, well, we'll just take this perfect dockyard or naval base that we happen to make up perfectly for you. It's
and
crazy.
Built a military base and access roads by the airport to facilitate their deployment.
One of the biggest motivations for standing up a ghost army that nobody can quite describe or define, the main purpose of that is to make sure that the activities that the people do are not seen and cannot be traced and tracked.
But that doesn't always work. In April of 2022, a mass grave in the Malian desert was traced back to the Wagner Group. They've also been linked to other violent incidents in Mali, including here, where they killed about 350 men in March of 2022. A UN report shows that since Wagner's arrival in Mali, the number of civilian deaths has increased by 324%, and thousands more have been displaced. Once the Wagner Group arrives in a fragile country and intervenes militarily to help local dictators backed by Russia, the big question is, what's in it for them?
Because they're so integral to the military technical agreements, they're also part of a cycle of debts and loans that are incurred when client states of Russia want to, improve their armies. In exchange for those loans, typically, the Wagner Group, through a series of shell companies, will get payment in the form of oil or gold or uranium even.
Which is exactly what happened in Sudan, a country that's been under autocratic...
Like, it's not like, oh, in the end, we'll take that oil. It's like, that was, I'm sure, the plan from the beginning. And
for 3 decades, went through a series of coups, and is now ruled by Sudan's military. Sudan's relationship with the Wagner Group began in 2017. At the time, Sudan's then president, Omar al-Bashir, felt his grip on power slipping and met with Putin to establish a new alliance with Russia. Transcripts show he presented Sudan as Russia's key to Africa. Soon after they met, Russian military vehicles like this one were spotted on the ground. And videos of Wagner troops training Sudanese soldiers surfaced on social media. In 2019, when al-Bashir was overthrown in a military coup, the arrangement persisted, proving just how enmeshed Wagner troops and the Sudanese army have become. And that's because the Wagner Group has a lot to gain. In exchange for providing weapons and training, the Wagner Group operates gold plants like this one, where they exploit Sudan's natural resources.
in a country, like, if it is like, this might sound belittling to the countries. I'm not trying to make it sound, but it's important that I say it because I think it's true and a somewhat good analogy. It's like adults taking advantage of less grown-up countries. And by less grown-up, I just mean less established countries that are just very fragile governmentally. You know, they don't have a very solid government. And so it's just... And again, I don't want to act like I think America's perfect. America has done the same thing. I'm just saying that when countries just look at baby nations or nations that... you know what I mean, okay? I don't have to keep repeating myself. Look at these nations and then see... And I'm sure the nations believe, oh my God, here's someone to help me. Like, I got that feeling
Wagner
just...
has Wagner soldiers
looking right here,
on the
okay?
ground. And
It's like, oh, wow, these Russians, or X, enter any country, are helping us and to train to fight our people, and they're sending us, look how nice. When in the Russians, or the country, in Russia in this case, okay, is all they see you is as pawns in their greater scheme to eventually get what they want. And I think it's important that I want to say that I'm not just saying that certain countries do this and some other countries are somehow morally better, but I just got that feeling looking at this.
Like this one were spotted on the ground. And videos
It's just,
of Wagner
okay,
troops training
you go down
Sudanese
and die.
soldiers
Go ahead,
surfaced on
you
social
die.
media.
All right, now
in
you die.
2019, when al-Bashir was overthrown in a military coup, the arrangement persisted, proving just how enmeshed Wagner troops and the Sudanese army have become. And that's because the Wagner Group has a lot to gain. In exchange for providing weapons and training, the Wagner Group operates gold plants like this one, where they exploit Sudan's natural resources.
Getting that kind of high-value commodity that can be quickly turned into cash through a money laundering enterprise is a big part of the Wagner Group playbook. But all of it is illicit and illegal.
And Sudan is only one example. The Wagner Group's illegal mining activities span the whole continent. The Wagner Group's playbook has reportedly made Prigozhin a billionaire, and the group is now also a legal entity, with headquarters in St. Petersburg. Putin has often denied links to Wagner Group activity, but in recent months, Prigozhin has started speaking publicly about his role, like when he claimed that victory in Soledar. It's drawn new sanctions and increased his role, like when he claimed
And that
it's drawn new sanctions and increased scrutiny from around the world.
And that poses a serious challenge for Putin's regime and military influence across continents.
But couldn't you do this? Couldn't you... So now that the Wagner Group is more out there, right, and people are noticing it, couldn't you then just create another secret group that no one knows about and then have them do the same thing while keeping this group public, but calling the other group something else? And being like, okay, wow, the Wagner Group, they're not really seen doing anything, but instead it's this whatever group over here.
Serious challenge for Putin's regime and military influence across continents.
Really interesting video. So I've learned. So what the Wagner Group seems to be, I wasn't sure the Wagner Group, right? I wasn't sure if it was a very elite, like a Navy, like the Russian equivalent of like a Navy SEAL or something. That's not it. So it's just a group in the Russian army that they can send around the world to do more side quest stuff, I guess is a way of putting it. Yeah, all right, yeah. So it's their tool to go around the world and do this stuff. I found it very interesting how I don't think countries today or people today are any different mindset-wise, or are very different from people 200 years ago, where Europe really just, hey, we're gonna split up Africa, you know what I mean? I think that people would still do that if it weren't for the fact that it's bad for your own country's interest to appear openly like people didn't care about appearing 200 years ago. Like, yeah, we're the biggest, baddest countries in the world, empires in the world. What does it matter if we have a bad reputation from other lower countries around the world, right? Well, now where everything is a lot more interconnected and people can see stuff, it's like the game is the same exact game as it was in the 1800s, right? Is extract resources where you can, exploit people where you see fit, and get out what you can. It's just that the rules have changed, and you can't just be openly, yeah, I'm taking this part of Africa, treating the people awfully, who cares who sees it, taking away their resources or manpower or farm, whatever it is, farmland, whatever they need there, and just leaving with it, and then selling it to other countries who are like, yeah, we do the same thing. It's like the game is the same thing. It's just you can't be so open about it anymore, you know? Anyways, I hope, guys, I always want to make sure that I say my opinion, but I don't sound too confident, okay? I don't consider myself an expert in anything, to be honest. I got my degree in history, a 4-year degree in history, college, but I don't even consider myself an expert in that, to be honest. So I'm still learning. I hope I didn't come across too cocky with what I said, and I want you guys to know it. All of my opinions are open to telling me what it is, and I can change it if I think you make a good point. I don't want to come across this as if like, yeah, this is what's happening, if you don't believe it, oh, you're stupid, or no. I don't know a lot what I'm talking about. I'm just saying stuff, and I like to have that conversation with you guys in a healthy way in order to learn more, you know, understand stuff more. Hope you guys are doing well. Love y'all, and I'll catch you next time. I'm gonna do the Johnny Harris video now of the American coups. Bye, guys.